Greetings, welcome. You are a world leader, and it is always an immense pleasure and honor to be with you. Here we are. This video may seem like the most important of the series, but in reality the previous one was, because the future stems from the openness of our hearts to explore and thrive within the ever-unfolding nature of truth. The future is determined by you. It is natural to want someone else to take a measure of risk before we do, yet we also need to be that person for those who come after us. In terms of the path forward, ultimately you can't go wrong, yet some paths are much easier and rewarding. If you accept the reality as discussed in the previous video that pure selflessness ultimately prevails, it's all downhill from here. This is an increasingly prominent subject. In addition, these videos are simplified overviews, and of course mistakes are always possible. Yet it is very important to engage in conversation and to move the knowledge base forward. Let's get to the question at hand where the previous video ended, and let's do this right. Just as we established centuries ago that the sun does not revolve around the earth, neither does the universe. There's only one inevitable answer to the question at hand, and it is the honor of my lifetime to present it. Welcome home. We will walk through the detailed proof a bit later. A range of avenues introduced through courageous visionaries are available. In fact, any path you take, as long as you keep moving forward, will eventually arrive there. I'll introduce one of my favorites, and one which easily should have won a Nobel Peace Prize if ever a body of work did. But before we get there, it's important to begin with the context, starting with two fundamental concepts. The first is that you are safe. You are with family. Love always prevails. The second is that you have a front row seat in determining the future. You may be thinking, why isn't this going through world leaders? Well, it is. It's going through you. Everyone is innately a world leader, but the term world leaders in quotes often refers to people on the basis of their titles and associated egos. Is that real leadership? Or is real leadership determined by courage and selflessness? Doesn't this reduce to the difference between words and actions? The difference between claims and character? Those who are smart enough to reach us are smart enough to see through these facades. It's not that those in positions of power haven't had their chance. They've had it for many decades. Yet they've been consistently unsuccessful, or turned a blind eye, or just kicked the can down the road to the future, hoping that somebody with more courage would effectively come along and lead on this subject. Well, now that can be you, if you'd like. This is an extremely important subject, and it is crucial for us to begin with the strongest foundation. So let's start with terminology, recognizing the importance of connotations. There are different ways that you could refer to me. You could say, that jerk Steve. Or you could say, that outsider, Steve. Or you could refer to me as a loved one. And each of these have their counterparts relative to our extended family. That jerk correlates with the term in the upper right corner of the screen, that outsider. In my view, correlates with the term extraterrestrial. And loved one correlates with our soul family. The first term is simply bigotry shorthand for, let's alienate the rest of the known universe except for ourselves. This is obviously extremely offensive and never acceptable. These next two terms are more discretionary, but I really want to build the best foundation for harmony across our extended family. The term extraterrestrial can be received as that outsider, and as I'm describing it, it can convey insidious loathing below the surface. It's a very self-centered, Earth-centric outlook. Should we list all of the planets in the universe that one isn't from? There are 8 of them just within our solar system. I'm from California. If I travel to Connecticut, do you think I should be introduced as that non-Connecticutian, followed by negatives of the balance of the Union? Or instead of recognizing me by name, should we list all the names that I don't have? These are wonderful names, don't get me wrong, but none of them are my name. The term soul family is heard as you understand me, because as we'll describe in a future video, the term soul refers to the truest, most non-superficial aspect of oneself. And for the same reason that we would lay out a welcome mat, we should recognize everyone as family. The other thing we really need to talk about before proving the reality of our soul family is the backdrop as to how we ended up where we are right now. Let's talk about the concept of scale. We may understand math in concept, but it's important to review just how rapidly situations can spiral. Let's look at our hands, 10 fingers, and bring at our feet, 20 fingers and toes. If we multiply by 10 for 20 times, we immediately arrive at 100 quintillion. If just 1% of 1% of this is incorrect, that's 10 quadrillion complete mistakes. Let's take a look back at the era of the steam engine. Do you see the 1% of 1% of an issue here? I'll give you a clue. It's taking up about half the page. Where is that smoke going? The situation is fundamentally unsustainable. Yet literally, society decided to proceed full steam ahead. It's emblematic of a paradigm by which the mind was prioritized over the heart. As we've discussed in the previous videos, the mind is a calculating resource that specializes in precision, whereas the heart is a giving resource that specializes in accuracy. The world is much more complex than can be captured on a single screen, but I believe this is a fair overall synopsis. We have vigorous pursuit of technical innovation, yet chronic persistence of policy problems. There's convenience for the minority gender, yet struggles for the majority. The same thing with wealth. Minuscule groups have great wealth, while great populations have minuscule wealth. The affluent struggle with boredom, while the poor struggle for attention. Our modern world congratulates itself while steamrolling Aboriginal wisdom. Our planet is seen as a vehicle for consumption as we comparatively abandon our reverence for the sanctity of life. We contemplate how without prioritizing the long-range perspective of the original purpose. We think in terms of material needs and over-prioritize ourselves relative to the immediate needs of massive populations beyond our particular parts of the world. We operate within legal systems characterized by complexity rather than common sense, incomprehensibility instead of clarity or simplicity, and which amount to an abundance of threats fixated upon a world we don't want, rather than exemplary kindness that can deliver the world we do. We could elaborate on each of these items, but let's hone in on the last one. Short of the need for greater harmony, which is largely already solved upon inward reflection, one of the world's next biggest problems is bureaucracy. The issue is that bureaucracy constitutes an absence of transparency and an absence of checks and balances. Yet the reliability of checks and balances requires checks and balances, and the reliability of transparency requires transparency. Or put another way, opacity is fundamentally different from accountability. People are not innately evil in the long run, no one is. Yet situations can get far, far down the tracks before we recognize the flaws within our original assumptions. An analogy would be that if you were to store your life savings within a trash bag, opacity, would you be surprised to someday find it sitting on the curb? The solution to bureaucracy is transparency. You may be thinking, if our soul family deeply treasures us and are smart enough to get here, why don't they solve this themselves? The answer, as stated in the previous video, is that the openness of your heart and the courage to embrace truth are gifts that only you can give yourself. Your autonomy is sacred. You are the only one permitted to be you. The root issue is not a matter of intelligence, the mind. but of the heart. However, your soul family is available to help upon request, amidst wisdom that can see well beyond ours. Ultimately, all limits contrary to love can be overcome. The path to that destination depends upon the creativity of your free choice. This discussion also explains why bureaucracy is wrong. Opacity impedes you from shaping your own destiny. Yet opacity is unfortunately widespread among many influential institutions. Transparency, not more bureaucracy, is the solution. We've seen how quickly situations can spiral and how initial flaws can get out of control. Yet now let's take a look at the progression of an individual life and explore its available wisdom. A baby is born. Everyone loves the baby. You got that right. Everyone is family. You bet. Everyone is a stranger. Whoa, where did that come from? There's value in being careful, but referring to the rest of civilization as strange just because they aren't us is the antithesis of care and a working definition of bigotry. We innately had it right the first time. Moving forward, the baby grows into a child and aspires to change the world. Everything is clear. Changing the world is way more important than earning money. Our objective is to give rather than take. We have long-range vision facilitated by the accuracy of our heart. The details of the future are not locked, but that's okay because they never are. We commit to doing our part and trusting the process. But then a time comes along during adolescence or young adulthood in which we feel constrained to proceed in a paradigm of money and progressively reset our values accordingly. Yet the priority of money persists because we tolerate it. If each of us innately realizes there's a better way, who is left to convince? Shouldn't we help collectively turn our attention back to our original values, rather than stay mired in a paradigm that we innately agreed we didn't want? After all, what child aspires to live their life after their life is largely over? A better world is possible, and our family can help make it happen. It is my pleasure to help formalize the introduction through one of a limitless possibility of paths. Welcome home. There's a lot to discuss. I like to introduce Dr. Greer's work on the basis of its robustness, meticulousness, and essentially irrefutable logic. And his work is the foundation from which I established to my satisfaction that our soul family is real. Links to his key resources are presented in the YouTube page for this video, and we'll introduce other paths in the future. It's important to recognize that our soul family is generally much more sophisticated than us, and can prolifically utilize an aspect of physics that often seems elusive to us within our daily lives. We'll explain this in our next video, but in a nutshell, a lot of things that seem impossible ultimately are attainable. Recognizing that your family immensely loves you and has this capability, it only makes sense amidst their wisdom that they would seek to most effectively inspire you to grow relative to each contact experience. Upon being of service on this subject, I was contacted. Our relationship has deepened over time, and this video series for you is the product of our collaboration. I can't take credit for the ideas they're helping to inspire, many of which build upon ideas they earlier helped to inspire in others. But I, of course, take responsibility for any issues in translating their intent. If you'd like to engage with our soul family, I'll explain how you can in a future video, once our foundation's in place. But for now, it's important to begin with the crucial matter of balance. We want to focus upon the purpose of our family being here, and not to be sidetracked on the downside by the abundance of earthly corruption concealing their presence, or on the upside by the metaphysical treats that our family can deliver relative to the virtues that they are intending to foster. The seemingly bottomless pit of corruption involved in concealing this matter can easily become an all-consuming and raging passion. The permanent solution is simple, comprehensive forgiveness. Let's explain why. On the screen, we have two conflict resolution strategies, which we can describe in simple terms as wrong and right. The goal is not to win the battle, but to win the war. We want to focus not on a temporary patch, but upon a permanent solution. Instead of a circumstantial context of success, we want an unlimited one. So instead of transitory physical advantages, we want to win across the unlimited venue of ethics. We don't want to settle for the limits which we can temporarily externally force. We want to focus upon inspiring full alignment, which is fundamentally voluntary. Rather than focus upon the symptom, we want to focus upon the root issue. Instead of dwelling upon a profound impact of poor treatment, we want to ensure that the phenomenon of reciprocating poor treatment from party to party over time is averted through mutual consent. So instead of sustaining the problem, we want to solve it. Again, instead of reinforcing the back and forth continuity of poor treatment, we want to demonstrate by example that a better way, a permanent solution, is possible. Rather than motivate future harm, our objective is to eliminate motivation for future harm. We want to stop kicking the can down the road, stop the pendulum of reciprocating exploitation, and permanently solve the problem. In terms of means, motive, and opportunity, only motive encompasses the full context. Only motive is voluntary, and thus able to extend to the depth of an individual's being. To be voluntary, motivation must be personally selected rather than imposed. In terms of service, courage for the greater good is among the noblest of virtues. However, it must be coupled with the wisdom of applicability to the root solution, which is prevention rather than remediation. If a military force is ever called to service, failure has already taken place. Rather than an expensive investment that is focused upon failure, we can have an efficient one that is focused upon success. Instead of temporary strength from local material assets based upon shrewdness of the mind, permanent strength simultaneously for everyone is available through unity based upon fairness, the heart. The expensive failure-oriented approach requires the most powerful military, ideally larger than the militaries of the rest of the world combined, ultimately sought simultaneously by everyone. Does that sound sustainable? The efficient, success-oriented approach requires open-mindedness, courage, wisdom, love, and trust. Is that affordable? Do we want better ideas or bigger militaries to guide our future? What if the simultaneous pursuits to dominate the world's resources were to collapse our ecosystems first? As long as freedom and this resource competition persist in a world of finite limits, collapse is inevitable. Freedom is sacred. Resource competition is an otherwise unwanted derivative of scarcity. Amidst finite resources, freedom is sustainable only through cooperative prevention, rather than reactionary intimidation. Even if the finite limits could be removed, say through metaphysical technology, boundless resource competition would eventually lead to failure, because the ultimate limit, as we've described in the previous video, is that love, not selfish consumption, prevails. That's why the previous video is the most important of the series. The subject of harmonizing with our soul family is not about technology. It is about the most crucial matter of prioritizing the heart over the mind to achieve a future of success rather than failure. Technology is not the answer. It only intensifies a trajectory. The solutions to the world's problems are in the laboratory of your heart. No fancy resources are necessary. Every day is a new opportunity to begin. Every redwood starts as a seed. Provide a seed for a solution to grow, and in one way or another, it should. To tie together what we've talked about, peacetime prevention is more important than a war effort. Specifically, silent apathy toward accountability absences should be deafening. Most of what happens in the darkness may be absolutely fine, but that's the danger. When we get comfortable believing in checks and balances, without actually having checks and balances, we stop watching, and the little that isn't can grow into a big problem. And that's where we are right now. What's the solution? Full spectrum forgiveness, and service as a personal working example of a better future. We'll talk more about this a little later. Let's turn to the other end of the spectrum. As we mentioned earlier, your soul family is generally very technologically sophisticated, so defiance of conventional physics can deliver wonder and create instant memories for you, which are amazing and beautiful and should always be treasured. Yet it is crucial to keep in mind that your soul family immensely loves you and wants to best help you grow as a person, not neglect your growth by simply providing entertainment. Therefore, as we may communicate with a pet, except in this case with us being the less intellectual being, we want to focus upon the message more so than the language. We want to focus upon inspiration to become a more loving soul rather than the metaphysics. Or put another way, we want a postcard to serve its purpose, rather than to be effectively discarded as an end in itself. As with any relationship, we should love our soul family for who they are, rather than what they can do for us. If you make it all about them, then you will help inspire them to make it all about you, out of mutual love. It's very simple. They are souls, just as we are. Treat all others as you would want to be treated. Replace people with souls, and as we'll discuss later, both the world out there and the world around us now are much richer than we have generally known. You are safe. You are with family. It is a big, new, beautiful reality. Though not really new, because the general subject of the metaphysical is already widely known. The matter of methodically acknowledging it and taking it to its inevitable conclusions is not. You will have extraordinary opportunities to unleash your creativity. Yet that is why it is crucial for each of us to be driven by our heart, what we should do, more so than our mind, what we could do. It would be irresponsible and irrational for us to continue hurting ourselves, hurting our planet, hurting those around us, and potentially hurting those beyond our planet by insisting upon learning the hard way that love is the greatest power and always prevails in the long run. It is a lesson we must learn the easy way. We must row with this current and not against it. We can achieve this by focusing upon service and regarding metaphysical treats and any other possible rewards as unexpected and unnecessary, yet always deeply appreciated icing on the cake. More specifically, we can achieve this by, first, constantly striving to grow as people. Secondly, ever further nurturing the best in everyone. And thirdly, enjoying the creative and fulfilling personal hobby of continuously embracing small risks to give miracles opportunities to happen, and then to exponentially expand. You've heard of accidents waiting to happen. The exact same thing is true of miracles. Talk about inexpensive investments. We want to completely unleash our creativity. Think in terms of the big picture, ideally the most universal context possible, and then relentlessly and unendingly seek to optimize reality for everyone at the expense of none. And as we'll discuss later when we talk about advanced physics in our next video, everyone does not just mean us or life or matter or energy. Everyone means everyone. Now let's bring it more local again. There are many routes to the recognition that our soul family is real. As long as you keep advancing, all paths eventually lead there. Metaphysical experiences are often extremely subtle. This also makes them extremely special and inspiring, like noticing the first glimmer of your best friend at an airport. Their subtlety, in my experience, is often compensated by verification through mathematical infeasibility otherwise. The experiences make you reflect and treasure the gifts, expanding your capacity to love. Now, I'm not saying that floating lights haven't arisen out of empty space in my room. They have, and sound has been produced right out of thin air. And this is reality. There's no drinking, smoking, drugs, none of that involved. This is simple reality. And these types of experiences are widespread among people who've sought contact. What I'm saying, though, is that in my history, at least, metaphysical engagements this explicit are much less common than those that are more subtle. And there's great wisdom in that. Would you want your soul family to just give you a bag of jelly beans, as opposed to giving them to you one by one as rewards to grow into a better person? That's what I would want, and that's what they've done. It will be natural to initially focus upon proving that the experiences are real, which you will want to do, the same way that an infant initially seeks proof that their mother is present. Yet over the course of time, you will find it increasingly efficient, amidst ongoing, available validation, to trust in the wisdom of your heart. Eventually, you may be confident trusting your heart with ongoing validation in prudently discerning the imminent possibility, but not necessarily reality, at any given time, that wise messages are being offered to you potentially anywhere within your entire venue of perception, such as in contexts of lyrics of songs in your head, synchronistic timing of events, additional meanings of messages and situations, hunches worth further study, emotional resonance, images within randomness, and so forth. The discernment is the skill, of course, but with well-established, prudent discernment, the prospective benefits could be extraordinary. We discussed the importance of terminology earlier. Let's conclude with a couple additional words. We recognized that bureaucracy, unfortunately, amounts to absent accountability. Checks and balances actually require checks and balances. Transparency actually requires transparency. The solution is common sense rather than complexity, clarity rather than incomprehensibility, courage rather than cowardice, prevention instead of reaction, support, guidance, mentorship, inspiration, and love rather than abuse by punishment. In other words, motivation for a better future rather than motivation for a worse one, actions instead of words, and trust in the common sense that love always prevails in the long run, that a better future would actually be better, rather than fear of nonsense. Here's an overall map of the future we can have if we decide we want it, relative to what exists right now. We can be a success-oriented society instead of a failure-oriented one. We can focus upon cures instead of symptoms. We can trust one another instead of scurrying based upon fears. Common sense and clarity are the solutions to complexity and incomprehensibility. Courage is a paramount value, certainly over cowardice. The sanctity of values is more important than the sanctity of government. If you're camping, you still have values, even though there isn't a government around. Authentication is more important than following orders. Spirituality offers extreme avenues over neglect. We want to be exemplary, not hypocrites. We want to inspire instead of threaten each other. We want to nurture rather than conquer. We want to maintain the long-range focus that we had as children, rather than fall into a short-range focus when it matters most as adults. We want to prevent situations rather than just react to them. We want to invest in better ideas, not bigger resources. Transparency is the solution to opacity. Truth is everything relative to convention. Practice is reality, not theory. We want to be open-minded, not closed-minded. Curiosity is the gateway to the future, rather than complacency. We want to be shrewd on behalf of everybody, absolutely everybody simultaneously, not just ourselves. Accuracy is more important than precision. Wisdom is more important than ignorance, and likewise, we want a sustainable future instead of a series of stopgaps that are destroying ourselves and the planet in the process. Purpose is more important than methodology. Selflessness is the answer over ego, and we want to address the persistence of issues rather than individual instances building up aggression over time. We want to recognize the universal truth that all our family, absolutely everybody in the universe, is family, and we want to be inclusive instead of offensive. We want to share instead of take. We want to be fair instead of resentful. We want to recognize that enough is enough. Reality is like a potluck. You can't just take all the tables and all the dishes and put them all around yourself and leave everybody else starving. Everybody needs to have at least the basics. That's just common sense. We want to focus upon future generations rather than just us. Equality is the answer over dominion, collaboration over competition, and eternity matters relative to now. We want to have vigor instead of apathy. We want to create instead of destroy. We want to heal rather than whack each other over the head with discipline. Motives are everything relative to means. Internal morality is the answer, rather than external deferral. Action's the solution over apathy. We want to fully pursue our dreams, rather than focus upon running from our nightmares, surrendering to them by letting them dominate our potential. Remember, as we discussed last time, love, universally, is the greatest power. Why in the universe would we not trust this truth and most comprehensively harmonize with it? Imagination is limitless. Language is just a word set. Our values should drive our innovation, rather than comparatively purposeless innovation pressuring random values. We need to contribute more than we consume. Do we need to see graphics of the material effects that our lives are having on the planet to figure out the legacies we'll be leaving, unless we make a U-turn and establish for posterity who we really are? Earth is our sacred mother, comprised of fragile, interconnected systems. We can't treat her like a modern slave trade, not if we expect any help from the broader universe in which love prevails. We can bless each other as easily as we can curse, so let's do it. Gratitude for the patience that's shown to us opens doors, while resentment closes them. The future condenses to love instead of hate. Reverence for the potential within everyone is the answer, not abuse. We want transparent harmony, not covert warmongering. Why would we need covert warmongering to try to justify the existence of something other than common sense? Isn't that really a testament to the power of common sense? Results are the answer, not excuses. It's simple. It's all the difference between honesty and dishonesty, between substance and superficiality, between support and subjugation. And let's call a spade here. Management without accountability. Management without accountability is simply monarchy. This is a really important topic. So let's go to our key legal document here in the United States, the Declaration of Independence. Now, I know I'm not a lawyer, but considering this document was written more than a century before any lawyer alive today was even born, I think I can manage to read it. The key segments are highlighted. First, we have the point that human governments are subordinate to the jurisdictions of nature and metaphysical ethics. Even if not a legal principle, this would be evident by virtue of how physics works, as discussed in our next video. So nonsense laws like Europe's GDPR, though perhaps well-intended, are irrational, because we can't chase our tail to oblivion tracking the provenance of every data point in an interconnected reality. Here's an often overlooked principle. All are innately equal in value at birth. I know it sounds like a Hallmark card, but think about the corollary. A clear corollary is that manageable resources should be distributed accordingly. Well, people will say that intrudes with our freedom. Well, let's look at how this is structured. These rights, including liberty, the various rights outlined there, are secondary, listed after the prior point that manageable resources should be distributed accordingly if all are truly equal at birth, which is what the document says. Now, while being fully forgiving, absolutely, categorically, completely forgiving, holding no resentment whatsoever in regard to the corruption concealing the reality of our soul family, the unfolded consequences nonetheless should be properly factored in reviewing our always available option to withdraw our consent. The right of this option is reiterated. Change should not take place for light and transient causes, yet long and extreme corruption must be addressed with corresponding change. You may be thinking the answer is war. No, absolutely not. The answer is not war. The answer is never war. The answer is never war. The answer is peace. The answer is peace. It's completely simple. The details of the situation are known by the specific individuals involved, as well as by the whistleblowers. So for those of you responsible, you know what you've done. You know what you've done. It'll be wisest to align with integrity now, because you eventually will anyhow. But if you don't do it now, then inevitably the details of the situation will increasingly be brought to light by credible metaphysical techniques, if nothing else, to enable the population to fairly decide the future that works best for them. I'm trying to be very kind and caring, helping to thread together a future that works best for everyone. We talked about the details of what that could look like earlier. Let's go ahead and condense that to a word. We have a missing word here. Honesty versus dishonesty. Substance versus superficiality. Support versus subjugation. What's the opposite of monarchy? Well, it's anti-monarchy, which we can condense to anarchy, which is actually how the vast majority of human history has taken place. Anti-monarchy is simply another word for common sense. Think about it. Anarchy is operating all the time. Handshakes, the foundation of society, are unregulated. Friendships don't have administrators. Elevators are boarded without police. Do you review a legal memo each morning to see what local, county, state, and federal laws may have been added or revised? Do you watch for jurisdictional borders and stop each time you cross into a new city, county, state, or country to review and memorize all of the applicable laws? If no human can know all the laws, how can we be bound by them? We're already using common sense. If we disagree at first, we end up finding a path forward. We don't need an endless forest of legal and political language that ultimately condenses to the takeaway, figure it out yourself. People laugh when they hear this, but it's also recognized to be true. Transparency is the solution to bureaucracy. Common sense is the solution to corruption. And the use of covert warmongering simply attests to an operational deficit relative to common sense. Research in this area illustrates we do not need an arbitrary, complex legal model of the world. Reality fundamentally supersedes models. Contexts fundamentally supersede language. And imagination fundamentally supersedes the limits of words. The moral at hand is that if someone wants to influence others, they need to earn that access by helping others as they are, not first conforming others to their own arbitrary mold. Reality is its own best representation. So again, transparency is legitimacy. Recapping, anarchy is about prevention based upon trust in success-oriented true sustainability, as compared against remediation based upon fear in failure-oriented false stopgaps. Here are some of the best resources on the subject. While Larkin Rose is very blunt, and I don't necessarily agree with all of his points, he presents a very clear, easy-to-read explanation that should certainly be in anyone's library on the topic. James Scott has written several books on the subject, and his research has revealed the truth that models are inherently subordinate to the wisdom of reality. Now, as we talked about earlier, language has limits correlating with contexts, and although James Scott doesn't take issue with the specific word bureaucracy, the theme is clear. Modern statecraft is largely a project of internal colonization. If we recognize that all are equal, and that reality is wiser than models, then we should simply behave accordingly. Trust and common sense worked in kindergarten, and they of course still work now. We have a vision of what a better society may look like. Now let's bring it all home with one final simple concept. Remember this? We can describe the concept on the screen with a single word. Greed is relentless, non-stop maximization of the advantages of one at the expense of all. If we spell it backward, we have the opposite, dirg, relentless, non-stop maximization of the advantages of all at the expense of none. Greed is transient, whereas dirg is limitless. So this may be a clearer way of describing good and evil. Evil could be described as relentless, non-stop maximization of the advantages of one at the expense of all, and good could be described as relentless, non-stop maximization of the advantages of all at the expense of none. And as we talked about in the previous video, if we trust that which is limitless, why would we ever fear that which is transient? We're in a new world! Yet it's also perfectly natural. A lot more natural than bureaucratic paperwork, for sure. You work with individuals from different locations with different skills and appearances all the time. What are some of the key priorities of your soul family? The specific song linked at the end of this video should help you get to know them. You are innately world leaders and your family knows it. You are immensely, immensely treasured. Welcome home.